Certainly, we don't want canned answers, and we want to be open and honest, especially in relation to our own experience in the church. And yet, if you know questions are coming your way, it's always good to be prepared and think ahead, in any situation too. If I were asked this question, how would I answer?
I think sometimes you have to set the context first. You might be asked a question about history, you might be asked a question about doctrine, but you don't know where the person is coming from. You don't know how much they understand about the church as a whole. Are they looking at this through a very narrow lens, or do they really understand the broad sweep of what the church is about? And so sometimes in a conversation, it's very good to establish fairly early some essential parameters. And we've talked about this elsewhere, but we talk about it as the elevator speech or the bus stop speech, where for 30 seconds you know how to summarize the essential truths of the gospel. And that's good for everyone to be familiar with. You might want to, for example, talk about the fact that the first thing you need to know about our faith, before I answer that question, the first thing is that we are a Christian church, that we embrace Jesus Christ as our Savior, that we believe all that the Bible teaches about his birth, his life, his ministry, his crucifixion, his resurrection. We believe that the church that he established fell away from the truths that he taught and over centuries had to be brought back. And we believe that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints today, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, is the latter-day restoration of that ancient church. If you establish that at the outset, or at least fairly early on in your conversation, then you've got a reference point, you've got an anchor to go back. So people say something like, well, is it true that you guys give 10% of your income? Well, do you remember I talked about the restoration of the church? In fact, tithing is a biblical principle. So once you've established that sort of anchor, it's much easier to have a conversation and keep going back to the concepts that Christ taught.
You mentioned an elevator or bus stop speech. My experience has been people ask questions and they just want maybe a short answer just to get some clarity, and they're not really interested in going off into finer points of doctrine. Right. Is that your experience as well?
Yeah, I have no data to back this up, but I strongly suspect that the reason why some people won't ask questions of Latter-day Saints is because they don't want a 30-minute conversation. They're merely curious, and we want to feed them from a fire hose. So I think it is important to sense the level of interest of people, and if they're curious but they're only asking one question at the water cooler, you don't want to give them a theological lecture that is suitable for another venue. So yeah, short, simple answers, and then watch carefully and feel whether you're kind of overstepping it. I found in many conversations with non-members, and this might be over the dinner table or it might be somewhere else when you've invited people over for dinner, that you become conscious that you're not really, that there are other subjects at hand that you might want to talk about. You might want to talk about the football game that's just gone by. But actually, once a person who is not of our faith starts to ask questions, often they will want to pile on, and they will often say, I hope I'm not pressing too hard or whatever it is. But you've got to be sensitive to that it's a dialogue, it's a two-way conversation. Mm-hmm. You don't want people to feel that, oh boy, I'm sorry, how do I get off this topic?
Right.
But neither do you want to cut them short if they really are interested. So it's a matter of listening carefully to what the person is saying. Listening is so much a part of understanding.
So what I'm hearing you say is that you really need to understand your audience and the motivation of why they're asking these questions.
Right. And one good way to do that is to ask them about their experience. Just to say, this is what I found. In my personal prayers, this is what I found. What do you think? Make it a conversation and not a monologue.